Welcome to the Rock in Pinetown, and it's great to be here this morning. And the title that I've given my talk, and it's not a sermon, it's a title, and it's just going to be a little talk, and it's called My Life and My Testimony. Now, not many people know about my life, and when you leave here or when you stop looking at it on the YouTube, you're still not going to know a lot about my life because there's a lot of things I'm not going to tell you about my life. I want to save it for a bestseller later on when I get maybe a bit older. I was born at a very early age, and I was born in the back streets of Belfast, where it was a 2 up and a 2 down. There was no garden in the front, there was no garden in the back. In fact, that's when I came to South Africa, and they said, you've got a backyard, and your backyard was your garden. Well, when we had a backyard, it was just a yard. It was just concrete, and it was small. And outside there, you had your toilet. And inside, you didn't have a bath. You had the zinc. You remember the zinc baths? That Friday night was the night. Friday night, zinc bath in front of the fireplace. And you tried to do it before your sisters got back. Because you see, my sisters, I was born, and I was what they would call a late Lamaki. And I had 3 elder sisters. My mom gave birth to 5 children, but one of my sisters died before I was born. And we lived in a 2-bedroom house, 2 up, 2 down, and it was called a kitchen house. And I've always wondered, after leaving Ireland, I've often wondered why they call it a kitchen house, because the kitchen is where you lived. And the kitchen is where you cooked was called a scullery. So you had the scullery where you cooked, and the kitchen was where you lived. And then when we moved, I remember, I was there, and I can tell you, I know it because my life's divided up into years. And I know that at the age of 8, my dad was playing the premium bonds. It was like a lotto thing. And he won about £500. This was back in 1958. And £500 was a lot of money. And he took us all. We were in Ireland, and the only place we ever went to was Ireland. And I'm talking about Northern Ireland. We didn't even go across to the Republic of Ireland, because that would have been, that's a long way away. We just stayed in the north part of Ireland. And he says, I'm going to take you kids overseas. And he took us overseas. He took us to England. Okay, so that's where overseas was. We went to Blackpool, and we had a great time there. And when we came back, my mom had applied for what they call a council house in generally. It was through the Northern Ireland Housing Trust. And it was on the other side. I lived on the north side of Belfast, and this was on the other side of Belfast, on the east side of Belfast. And in that particular year, it just so happened we had a heat wave. But we had a heat wave as we moved house. So when I was a kid at 8 years old, and we had moved from a place that was cold and dank, and now we've got a new house and the sun's shining, I thought, what a beautiful country we've moved to. It had its ups and its downs. It was new. We used to play around the houses that were being built. But I lost a lot of friends because, to go and see my old friends, I would have to catch 2 buses, one into town and then from there up. So it was quite a traumatic time. I think it was about a year before I actually had any real close friends. And I'm not even sure if I still have or had close friends, because when I started to get older and you become a young man, and you want, obviously you've got things on your mind, and most of them was like girlfriends. And we would go out, and the dance halls in Ireland, you couldn't buy alcohol. You didn't want to buy alcohol. You went there for the music, and you went there for the girls, and the girls went there for the guys. Now, that was basically what it was about. And it was a funny place because Ireland's very much, Northern Ireland was very much split between Catholic and Protestant, probably still is today. And you can always tell a person's religion by their surname. So you'd always, if you're dancing on the floor, you're dancing, and then you ask what your name is, and should say, Mary O'Shanahan, then you'd know, she's from Roman Catholic society. I've got to be very careful here. And that's the way it was built up. I met a beautiful girl, and I got a job. Eventually, I got a job through the government. And if you see Stormont today, it's the Northern Ireland Parliament. And my job there was to do seating arrangements for the delegates that would come. And the seating arrangements I had, it looked like, inside it looked like Buckingham Palace. And you had to do seating arrangements. And the seating arrangements, it was my job. And I'd get a piece of paper like this, and I would draw a little table, and then I'd see how many seats, just little squiggles. I can get 80 on there. I can get, and then it was my job to get the other guys who were actually working under me to put the seats out so that everything was perfect. But it was just a squiggle, and only I could read it. So I had this girlfriend, and we broke up. And it was all right. I was playing hard to get, and she was just not interested. And and I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll write her a letter. And I never write letters. I'm terrible. So I did. I wrote a letter, and when I read it, I was actually almost in tears myself. You know, I thought, geez, this guy's so good. And I had this letter, and I thought, right, take the nerve up. I'm going to post it. So I sealed it in an envelope, and I posted it. And I never heard a word from her for weeks. And then one day I looked in my pocket, and guess what I found? I found the letter. I had posted her the squiggle that I had made. She must have thought, this guy has gone off his rocker. Grew up in the Troubles in Ireland when the petrol bombs were going strong. My mum used to be on she was such a lovely woman. My mum was 5 foot tall, and my dad was 5'1", and he was so proud of being 5'1". And but his size of shoe was size 5. Okay, for a man that was pretty small. So size 5 for a shoe. So he worked in the shipyard. He was a laborer, but his official title was a boiler maker's helper. And he would go to the shipyard in what we would call toughies. You know, the shoes, the school shoes, he would go with these toughies on. And these toughies were very good. And I remember when they went down to get a pair of shoes for him, he was too embarrassed to go in, and because they were children's shoes that he was buying, and he was too embarrassed to go in. So he had sent my mum in. And my mum was called Ina. My dad was called Jim, same as me. And he would say, Ina, I want you to go into the shoe shop and get me a pair of shoes. She said, okay. So she walked into the shoe shop, and the guy said, what do you want? And he looked and thought, these look strange. You know, these shoes are young, school shoes. Who's it for? She says, it's for my child. Now, my dad's standing outside the shop, you know. So the shoe salesman, he said, well, bring the child in. Where is the child? Oh, he's outside. Bring him in. My dad was about 9 years older than my mother, so there's no way he was going to go in there into that shop. So she said, she came up with a brilliant idea. And she said, I tell you what, let me put them on. So she put them on, and she started walking around. You know what you do when you put shoes on? She started walking around the shop. She says, yeah, they'll fit him, okay? That was the sort of life that I grew up in. It was a life where it was strange, it was humorous, but we weren't doing it as a joke. It was just the way we were. And that's why people come to me with Irish jokes. I often remember how the actual stories were that happened like that. It was amazing, but the troubles started, and then the army came, and the petrol bombs and the blowing up places, and I heard a story about the Woolworths used to sell all the linen clothes and everything like that, and on the second floor. And I heard stories afterwards where people thought that Osama bin Laden was actually in Woolworths, and because they were looking for him. Americans were looking everywhere for him, and why couldn't he be in Belfast? Anyway, they went there, and The reason it was called off because it wasn't him. It was just a sign that just said bed linen on the second floor. It didn't say. so, 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 you, so after a while, when I was 19 years old, and I was got tired because I remember sitting and the bullets were coming, and my mum used to listen on the radio, and she would hear that there was a car, that was my car, that used to have petrol bombs in the boot. You know, Molotov cocktails there. Petrol bomb. And we used to be able to tell how to make them and how to use them and when you use them and how you would actually, the contents you would put in them for whatever sort of result that you wanted, whether you put oil in them or whether you put sugar in them as well as the petrol. Anyway, I got tired of this and I was arrested and taken to a police station and interrogated. And then my mom, everything was on the radio in those days, and I was on the radio. And I was moving these all over the place. And I then got arrested and interrogated, but they let me go. They didn't charge me. So I had no criminal record. So I decided it was time to leave and go to somewhere else. So I joined the Royal Navy. And as I joined the Navy, I did well in the Navy. The Navy was very good. I joined the Navy. And for the first 6 weeks, you were stationed in a place called Plymouth. It was HMS Raleigh, which HMS Raleigh is just a naval establishment. Okay, my dad used to call it the HMS Never Budge because it never budged anywhere. It was just a building. He says, what kind of a sailor are you? You're on HMS Never Budge. Anyway, for 6 weeks, and they drummed into you so much fear and so much worry and so much law and so much regulations and so much rule that when you got out after 6 weeks and you went into the town of Plymouth, if you're standing with your hands in your pockets and you saw a policeman, you'd pull your hands out of your pockets right away because you were not allowed to have your hands in your pockets while you were in the Navy. So I thought, well, that's the way it is. The other thing you weren't allowed to do while you were in the Navy was grow a moustache. You could either grow a full set of a beard or nothing. Okay, so obviously I had nothing up until the very end, and that's why I grew a moustache. I grew a beard. And then I shaved the beard off and kept the moustache, and I've had that ever since. But getting on the ship, I was eventually sent, although I was in the Navy, I was attached to what they call the Fleet Air Arm. Fleet Air Arm is the aircraft section of the ship. It sounds Irish, I know that, it sounds Irish. And the Fleet Air Arm is the aircraft section of the ship where the aircrafts and the helicopters and the jets would land, and I was working, my job was to work on those. And I was assigned to a ship called an aircraft carrier called the HMS Hermes, and it was an adventure. It wasn't conscript. It was you volunteered. I got a certificate, and through that certificate, I was able to then get into South Africa. And because I was a radio technician, and I will be honest with you, I was the worst radio technician that I've ever seen in my life, because I could fix nothing. But when it came to the academic side of it, the Navy, the way they did it, and during Civvy Street, they would do day release where they would teach you, you would be hands-on for 4 days a week, and then 1 day of the week, you would then go to learn the academic side of it, the technical side, the drawings, and how it was all joined together with the ohms and the transistors and everything like that. And but the Navy didn't. They give you 6 months of that training, and 6 months of the technical sitting down, learning, training. I was very good. I came second in the class out of about 24. And it was really, really good. I remember the petty officer was teaching us about electricity, and he said, you know what? He said, how do we get watts? How do we count watts? And we don't know how to count. How do you count a watt? What wattage is that speaker? What wattage is this? What wattage is that? Here's how you get it. You get the voltage, which the current, which is the symbol is I, and multiplied by the voltage, which is V. He says, so it's I times V equals watts. That's what you do. So you get the current times the voltage gives you the watts. He says, I'll give you an easy way to remember it. He says, IV Watts. Girl's name, Ivy Watts. They all thought, that's right. We'll never forget that. And I haven't. I mean, this is like 50 years later, and I can still remember. It's Ivy Watts. We had a Scottish guy with us in the class, and he was a laugh a minute, but he wasn't meant to be. He was serious. But we laughed at him because he was so funny. So the petty officer, his name was Stanley Dove, and the petty officer said to him, "Okay, now, Dove, how do we get Watts?" He says, "I don't know, sir." He says, "Come on, Dove, think about it." He says, "I don't know." He says, "Give me a girl's name." Does that make any memories? He says, "Oh, it does." He says, "Rosemary." Came out of the Navy, realized that Northern Ireland wasn't, it was pretty closed, blinkered, and I came to Durban in South Africa, and it was fantastic, and I got in. But before I came to Durban, whilst I was in the Navy, I was feeling the call of God. Now, when I was a child growing up, back in the little 2 up and 2 down house, my parents would send me to Sunday school every week, but they would never go to church. But I had to go to Sunday school, and they would give me a couple of shillings to put in the offering. And every week I had to go to, we didn't even know what church it was. I found out much later because my parents didn't know whether it was a Methodist or a Presbyterian. Now, I could have been going to a cult for all they knew, that as long as I went there and I looked, my dad said, "Yeah, you've got to look, let's comb your hair. Yeah, you look more like, that's better. You've got to look like Prince Charles." And he says, "Get your hair right, your shoes polished, shoes are polished right, off you go. It was the Plymouth Brethren, and they were pretty strict people. But it was a Sunday school, and I enjoyed the Sunday school, and my parents never went. Then when we moved to the other house, and we moved to the other side where the sun was shining, and I got older, and I joined the Navy, my parents started to go to a Baptist church. And they were actually born again and saved at the age of 66 and baptized, praise God. Then they came and joined me when I came to South Africa. They came here in 1976, and they came and I had a little church that I was pastoring back in those days. And you know what the funny thing about it? And this is ironic. The ironic thing was I was young, and the people who would come, it was in Doonside, down the south coast, and it was a little building. It wasn't even a proper church. It was just a little building. And they would go inside, and there was young guys that would come off the beach, and they would come with their surfboards, and they'd put the surfboards in the hall, and they'd sit down, and I would be ministering to them, and they would enjoy the ministry, and then they'd take their surfboards, and off they'd go surfing again. And that was great. But you know what the problem was? We couldn't get old people. Isn't that ironic? Now we can't get young people. We used to baptize them, in the sea. And I remember, as God is my witness, there was one girl that I was baptizing, and I nearly killed her because the sea is very, in Ireland and all the way around the English coast, the sea is fairly calm. But in South Africa, the waves, you can't believe the difference. And the waves kept ripping her out of my arm 4 times. And I'm not the best swimmer in the world. And the 4 times they ripped me out, and eventually I got her, and she got under the water. Oh, gee, I says, "Now you're saved." She says, "Am I saved?" I thought, yeah, in more ways than one, girl. In more ways than one. But it was an exciting time. We were young, and we went out, and we used to dress up. We used to go to the Alhambra. Remember the Alhambra Theatre? They used to have a place where you could hire costumes. And we used to go and hire bear suits and all sorts of things where they would have. And we would go around the streets of Amanzimtoti with placards saying, "Jesus bears burdens," and we had a parade through. It was one Easter, we had a parade through, we had drum majorettes, and we had slow-moving vehicles, and a guy playing a piano in the back of one of these things, and I was dressed up as a clown. And we came to a big field, and in the big field, then the people all gathered around. There was over 1,000 people. We were able to get on, it sounded ridiculous, but I was able to stand on the back of a vehicle, dressed as a clown, talking about Jesus. And now, at my age now, some people look at this and say, "Who's this clown talking now about Jesus?" This time I don't have the makeup on. But my parents came across. We got a house, and in the house there were where you actually lived. Wasn't the kitchen. We would call it the lounge. Okay, my parents would never call it the lounge because a lounge in Northern Ireland is a pub. So it wasn't allowed to be called the lounge. It had to be called the living room. So it became the living room. And the kitchen, actually, guess what? We were actually allowed to cook in it. So it was fantastic. Those times were absolutely great. One time, and this is when it starts getting exciting, because when I gave my life to the Lord, it wasn't in a big church, and it wasn't an emotional call, and it was nothing like that. I was at home. And I was listening to some of Cliff Richard's records, and one of his records was called Higher Ground. And I love that song to this day, Higher Ground. And I was listening to it, and I thought, so I'll try and go to sleep, and I couldn't go to sleep. And this kept on my mind about Jesus and about higher ground, and wow. So I got out of my bed, and I got on my knees, and I squeezed my hands as tight as I could. And I said, Lord Jesus, I said, come into my heart, because I want to be part of you. But Cliff Richard was one of those guys. Remember Cliff Richard, the young ones? The young ones, yeah. Oh, well, those were the days. Anyway, I thought, if Christianity is like that, then I want that. I don't want the these and the thous. I want to learn. I want to know something. I want to have fun as a Christian. And I got on my knees and I prayed the Lord. I said, if this is you, if you are calling me, then when I go back into my bed, I said, I want to be able to sleep like a baby tonight, because I was battling to sleep. And I was young. I was 19 years old at the time. And I got back into bed and I went, boom, out like a light. The next morning, I felt like a new person. And since then, obviously, you don't, well, I didn't live a life of total Christianity all the way through, like I was goody two-shoes and stuff. No, I've had a lot of problems in my life. And when we had this church down in Doonside, I went through some troubles. But before we got to the troubles, I remember going to the Valley of a Thousand Hills. And up at the Valley of a Thousand Hills, back in the day, back in the 70s, you had a lovely, there was a coffee place up there, and you had a car park. And as you come out of the car park, Thousand Hills, where you're heading back towards Durban, it was a windy road. And I remember I was a rep for a tea company, and I had a beautiful car. It was a Ford Granada, and the Ford Granadas were big cars. And they had independent suspension, and it was great. Only problem with this car was that it used to stop every now and again. Like a naughty horse wouldn't go for you. This car was like that. So I drove out, and as I was going up this hill on the circle, it stopped. And oh no! But by this time I was a Christian, so I knew what to do. I got out, I opened the bonnet, and I wasn't a mechanic. I knew nothing about it. I says, Lord, I said, you. And isn't it amazing how you always praise Jesus and you always raise him higher when you need him? When everything's going all right, not so much. But I put the hands on the engine, and I said, Lord, you're the great mechanic in the sky. I said, I want you to tell me what's wrong. And I had my eyes closed. I was expecting to open my eyes and see a wire had come off somewhere. And I opened my eyes and I could see nothing. There was nothing. Everything was like that. I'm praying again, and the next thing I see, because you can see through the windscreen, and you can see through the back, and I see this car look just like mine, and drawing up behind me, young guy in it, come out and parked behind me, and he came around and he said, can I help you? And I said, yeah, gee, it just won't go. He says, well, I've got a car same as you. He says, and guess what? I'm a mechanic. And I thought, thank you, Lord. Have you ever had that experience where all of a sudden you've asked for something and it happens? Well, I had that experience. This guy says, I'm a mechanic. I've got the same car as you. And then he said to me, I don't know what's wrong with your car. He says, the petrol's going through. This is happening. This is okay. The ignitions are all right. He says, I'm sorry, I have to go. I said, no, don't go. God sent you. He says, I don't know what's wrong with your car. And he drove off and left me. And in life, sometimes we get disappointments. We think, this is it. And sometimes it's not it. So about 2 minutes later, remember the old-fashioned Ford Anglias came along, and I don't know how old you guys are or how well. I'm talking about the people watching on YouTube as well, but I know there's some people here, 18, very old. But anyway, what happened was I could see this little pale blue Ford Anglia with a lady, a little white-haired lady in it. She looked like, remember the Golden Girls? She looked like Sophie from the Golden Girls. And, and, and I thought, oh no. I've been standing there in the heat. I'm Irish. I mean, my skin isn't just white, it's a luminous. And this car pulls up, and this old lady gets out of the car, and she comes doddering around to me, and she says, "What's wrong?" And I was pretty livid. And I wasn't rude to her. I just didn't explain anything. I just said, "It's broke." "Oh," she said, "I'll tell you what, let's have a look at it." So she looks at it, and she says, "Okay, here's what we're going to do." She says, "You get behind the steering wheel." Now, remember, we're on a bend and we're on a hill. And she said, "You get behind the steering wheel, and I will push you." And I thought, yeah, that's going to happen. So she said, "No, you must get behind the steering wheel." So, all right, I got behind the steering wheel. She looks at the pedals. Now, in the pedals, you've got, when you're learning to drive, you go A, B, C. You've got your accelerator, your brake, and your clutch. So I looked at the pedals, and she said, she looked at the pedals, and she said, "Which one is the petrol?" Oh, I said, "This one, the accelerator, that's one." She says, "Okay." She says, "When I give you a push, you put your on that, right? Okay, we'll do that. Thank you very much." So she came around, she says, "But before you do that, I want you to pray." And I said, "Wow, okay." So behind the steering wheel, on the wrong side of the road, on a bend, I was praying, and I was praying more for my life than I was actually for the car to start. And I was praying, and she says, "Now I will push you." And she pushed the car, and it started like that. And I could not believe it. Really, the whole thing was just, she was on the passenger side window, and the window was down. And I said, "Sorry, excuse me." I said, "What church do you belong to?" Because I thought, if she goes to a church, I want to be there. If they can send an old lady to start pushing a Ford Granada and make it work, and a mechanic couldn't, I said, which church do you belong to?" And she said words that I'll never, ever forget. And she said to me, "I belong to every church on earth because I am higher than all churches." I never forget it. I belong to every church on earth because I am higher than all churches. God had sent an angel to help me. The mechanic couldn't, the angel could. And that made me cold. But anyway, there's a follow-up story to that, because Nicky Cruz was in town. Now, Nicky Cruz was in the Cross and the Switchblade. Nicky Cruz was the guy who wanted to cut up Pat Boone, who played the guy. He said, "I'll cut you into 1,000 pieces." And the minister said, "And every one of those pieces will love you." You know, it was so good. I mean, I'd love to be able to say that, yeah. Every one of those pieces will love. Nicky Cruz came, and it was at the Kingsmead. It was a soccer stadium. Kingsmead, there was a soccer stadium, and I went there. And Nicky Cruz gave the usual sort of evangelical talk, and everybody was, "Oh, yo, that's great." And I was driving home, and I lived in Morningside. And as I was driving home, I saw this guy's car parked to one side. He was under a lamppost, and he had the bonnet up, and it was nighttime. And I thought, I wonder if I can help him. So I stopped the car, and I went across, and I said, "What's wrong?" He says, "It just won't start." I says, "I know what's wrong with it." He says, "What?" I says, "Get behind the steering wheel." He says, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to push you." He says, "No." He said, "Because this is light here. You know, I'm under a street lamp. You're going to push me into the darkness." I says, No. Get behind the steering wheel." I said, "Now see the accelerator? When I push you, you put your foot in that accelerator." Yeah, I put it in reverse gear. Right, away we go. And I pushed the car, and it started just like that. And he had a little Mini. And of course, the Minis didn't have the roll down windows. They had the little slidey things across. He slid the window across. He said, "Oh, thank you so much." I says, No, don't thank me. thank God. And I got into the car, went home that night, and I had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't know why. And I said to the Lord, Lord, I'm not very good at getting up in the morning. I said, and the alarm clock will go off, I won't hear it. I said, please, I need to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I promise you to this day, my Lord strike me stone dead, at 4 o'clock in the morning, there was a knock on my bedroom door. And it wakened me up, and I got up. I was scared me because I opened the bedroom door and there was nobody there. So, those things were great. When we had the little church in Doonside, we had people come for heat. When we were walking around dressed up as bears, saying, Jesus bears burdens and Jesus will heal you, and somebody was dressed up as a foot, they came, and there's this one lady, and she said she has cancer. And we didn't say, well, we'll pray for you now. We said, well, come to the church, because that was the idea. You didn't get healed outside. You had to come to the church. You had to sing and worship and pray, and then you had to listen to the sermon, and then you'd get healed. So she said, all right, she'll come along on a Sunday night. So she came along Sunday night, and it was fantastic. The place was good. It was a small place, and she was there. I could see her. I said, anybody wants healing, come forward. She came forward. She says, my body's riddled with cancer. I said, that's okay. The Lord can take care of it. We will pray for you. And we prayed for her, and we never really saw her again. So I had her name, and she used to go to, it was Addington Hospital back in those days. It was a good hospital. And she went to Addington Hospital, and I actually, she came in and she popped in and she said that she was healed. And then we never saw her again. And I actually phoned the hospital, and the hospital said yes, she was totally cleared up. They took x-rays, and there was nothing. Everything was great. One night was very, very sad. A young girl came up. She was a beautiful little girl. She was only like small. and the people came from Cockstad, and she had long blonde hair, but she was deaf. And they said, please, this little child is deaf. Can you do something? I said, well, I'm not, only God can heal. And so bring her forward. And I prayed for her that the Lord would touch her and heal her. And then I turned her away from me, and I spoke in her ear, and she heard me. I spoke in the other ear, and she heard me. And she was healed, and it was great. It's amazing. Those feelings are fantastic when you see that God is actually working and doing things for you. Right, now what I wanted to say was, all right, after that period of time, of all those great healings and that baptism where I nearly lost the girl, and now I'm down the South Coast, and I went through a very difficult period in my life, and I ran away from God. I decided, an issue happened in my life, and half the church were for me and half were against me. And I couldn't take it, because I felt that you got hurt more with churches than you did with normal people. You could go out into a pub, or you could go to a restaurant, or you could go with friends, and they were okay. They were always with you. They were always there for you. And you had your arguments, but they were there. You go to a church, and it could be vindictive, and people just did not forgive you. And I couldn't handle. And I thought, no, I'm out of here. I'm gone. I'm leaving, and I'm going. So I thought I'll go as fast as I can to Cape Town. So I caught a train. It took 3 days, from 3 days to get to Cape Town in those days, by train. I go to there, and I thought, right, I'm finished with the Lord. That's it. I still believe in him. But I don't want to get involved with his people. I do not want to get involved with Christians, because Christians irritate me. And as I was walking along the Christian beachfront, you had Sea Point down there, and Green Point, Sea Point. And I was walking along, and you'd be in the beach, and then you'd get these guys, and they'd come along and give you little Jesus tracts. And I didn't want to know them. That's the last thing I want to do. And when you get hurt with the Lord, and you think you get hurt with Christians, and yet of all people will come, oh, Jesus loves you, get away from me, and they would give you little tracts, and you just read the tract. Yeah, I'll read it later, And 2 years later, I came back, but 10 years later, I only came back to the Lord. And when I came back to the Lord, I felt something happened. My wife, by then wife, Beverly, her father died. And she said to me, look, she said, you used to be a do some preaching. Won't you do his funeral? It's at Dove's down in Durban, the funeral parlor. And I said, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to get involved. She said, please do it. Please go. So eventually, I looked and I thought, he was a good man, and yes, I will. He was actually, he died when he was 63 years old of a twisted colon, and he was a very important guy with the independent newspapers. He used to work for the Mercury, and then he worked for the Daily News, and he was the chief proofreader of that. So he was very, very, very important to them. So when I went to Dove's, the place, they used the big chapel, and it was full, absolutely full. And I use the word chapel, and if people who are watching this and they're living in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, a chapel is a place where Roman Catholics go to worship. Protestants don't. They go to churches. They have a difference. So if I say we are now in the Rock Chapel, everybody knows it's a church building. But in Ireland, the chapel is where the Catholics go, and the churches is where the Protestants. Anyway, it was in the chapel at Dove's, and I give a sermon on Psalm 23. And afterwards, I could feel the Spirit. When I started, then I could feel the Spirit of the Lord coming upon me, and I could feel the teaching coming out. And I afterwards, a couple of people said, "What church do you go to?" And I remember that old lady. I belonged to every church in Earth, and I thought, you know what? I said, I go nowhere. I really go nowhere. I was like a lost soul again, basically. But I wasn't, because Jesus never lets you go. He says, no one will take you out of, no one will pluck you from me. Huh? No one, not even you. And Bev was brought up in a Presbyterian church, and I was sort of brought up in a whole lot of places, but I got acquainted with Pentecostalism and talking in tongues and that sort of stuff. And I thought, well, I'll go to a church and see if I like it. I'll check it out. Don't you go? I'll go. She said, no, I'll come with you. I'm your wife. No, I said, don't go, because I didn't want her to be frightened away. And I went to a church, and they spoke in tongues in the church. I thought, well, how am I going to explain this to Bev? And I came back, and she said, you know what happened to me? I was in the bath, she says, and I was praying. She says, and all of a sudden I started to speak in this language. She said, it was the tongues. And she said she was scared because she thought it was maybe the devil or something putting these words into her mouth, And meanwhile, the devil was at church with me. And we had prayer meetings, and then we went, I remember going to a prayer meeting at the church, and there was a lot of thunder and everything. When it rains and when it really thunders in South Africa, we didn't get that in Ireland, not like that. We got a lot of rain, but here when it rains, it doesn't mess around. And the lightning and the crackling, and she thought, wow, and she's heard so much about the rapture. She grabbed hold of Natasha and Carrie, and she ran out onto the veranda, and she says to the kids, this is it. Get ready to jump. When you hear the crack, it'll be the rapture. Anyway, it wasn't the rapture. It was just a bad time. I just want to, I'll be finishing just now so you can relax, but I just wanted to say a few things about when we started. It took me another 10 years, by the way, before we started The Rock. And it was a guy called Max Cook who became like a brother, a proper brother to me. He was a great guy. And every day we would sit together and discuss. We were tired of the way the churches operated. We were really tired because there was so much politics and so much hurt and there were so many people who had left churches that were being hurt by those churches. And we said, why don't we do something and try and get those people and try and attract the young people? And here, there used to be a club called Club 54. So we decided we would open up a place. And I remember we looked through in Crompton Street, we looked in a shop window, and Max said to me, how much do you think it'll cost to get this shaped up into a coffee bar? I said, maybe about 5,000 rand. 35,000 rand later, we still hadn't got it correct. And we sat there, and we got this place in Crompton Street, and we had pool tables, we had dartboards, we had coffee shop, a coffee place where people would serve. We had this big stage, and I remember when we had it, when it was empty, and we had some people that came around to have a look at it. And I remember two couples. There was John and Lynn Young, And John has passed away, now he's going to be with the Lord. And Lynn, she says to me, Jim, you know, when you told us and you took us walking around this empty building and you said, this is where the stage is going to be, this is where the kitchen's going to be, and this, she says, I thought you were mental. But that happened. The Lord made it happen. And we started to get, people started to give us donations to get things done. MTN, they put in all the lighting for us. We had people that came and built the actual coffee shop. We had donations come through that where we were able to have curtains, but it took a long time. When I say a long time, it took longer than what I thought, because I was expecting it like that. And I got cross with God one day, and I said, you know, look, I'm sitting at home now. I'm saying, you know what? I said, I'm doing this for you. I'm me. I'm doing it for you. like he could have said to me, do you know what I've done for you? I'm doing this for you. It's not for me. All I need is some people to help, to give some donations, and just to. And you know what? I got a feeling in my head, and the feeling said, do you know what you must do? Get out of the way. Get out of the way and let me work. The next day, we got stuff came in from people that are in this congregation now, and we got stuff started to come through. And the place just started to take off, and it was great. But after about 5 years, when the rent was like going through the roof, I felt the Lord again saying, you know what, now you've entertained the young people, and now a lot of the big churches now have got coffee bars that where they can go to, that young people can go to. Now it's time for you to start going into the teaching ministry. And the teaching ministry, I was very interested in what it's called Hebraic studies, because when I was going through a hard time in the church, in the church that I joined, I was getting excited because I started to read about the tabernacle in the Old Testament, and about the priesthood, which we spoke about yesterday, and about the festivals and the feasts and the sacrifices, and I could see Jesus in all of these things. And I got so excited one night, 3 o'clock in the morning, I went through and waking Bev up to show her the Bible, the scriptures. Look at this, look what it says here. Did you know what it means? 3 o'clock in the morning wasn't the best time to go and talk to her about the Lord. And I'm sure the words that she spoke wasn't in tongues. But there's so much to know, and I'm going to finish off now. Here's what I just want to finish: is my life, my testimony, and I'm nearly done. You know, a couple of things I just want to say is that when we get to Jesus said in Matthew 28, he said, "I want you to go and be witnesses, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." And we don't know what baptizing in the name means. And then in the book of Acts, Peter says, I want you to go, and he baptized in the name of Jesus. But the Bible says that you've got to baptize in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And Jesus was God. And Jesus was, so it was the same. God's name is his character. And that's what spreads throughout the world, as the character of God, which is so, so important. And it's his character. And I looked at a couple of things, and I thought, you know what, I'm interested, because Israel, and especially in the first century and in the Old Testament, they had so many idioms that we just don't get. If I was to say to you, you know, Fred has kicked the bucket, you'd think, well, Fred has died. But if someone 2,000 years from now reads Fred has kicked the bucket, they think somebody called Fred had actually kicked the bucket. So those are called idioms, and those idioms came through. Matthew 6, when Jesus is talking on the Sermon on the Mount, he talks about the evil eye. And I remember my mom used to say to me, oh, I'm going to give you the evil eye, which meant, you know, you better be careful. But the evil eye, back in the first century, meant stingy. It didn't mean anything else. It just means that you couldn't see your way clear to give more money. And when the lady, when she gave her 2 mites, remember the lady in the Bible gave her 2 mites, because that's all she had, 2 little coins. And she put it in, it was in the ladies' court, the woman's court, in the temple. And God looked, and he mentioned her. Look at her. She's got nothing, and she's giving everything. 2 mites. Okay. She didn't have the evil eye. She was generous. She had what they would call tzedakah in Hebrew. And she gave what she had. Then I looked at John 2, verse 1, and Jesus is now, doing his very first recorded miracle, which is the turning the water into wine. And I thought, wow, you know, and it tells you there's 6 pots. Why is there 6 pots? Why? There must be a reason why there's 6 pots. Well, 6 is the imperfect number. 7 is the perfect number. And these pots were filled with water. They were actually cleansing pots at a Jewish wedding, and where the Jews would come in and they would do the water cleansing, which is a ceremonial cleansing, not just where you wash your hands, your face. It was ceremonial, so it was a religious thing. And Jesus then said, all right, what I want you to do is they said, oh, we've run out of wine, and Jesus then said, okay, to the servants, what I want you to do, don't take anything out, don't take any water out of those pots. And he changed that water into wine. And the whole symbolic thing of that story is that Jesus did not take anything away, but he changed it. And that's what happened in the Old Testament. God has been preparing us in the Old Testament for Christ and the grace of salvation. And he didn't take it away. He changed it. He fulfilled it. And that's what he's done. He's fulfilled the whole thing. We see the lady who had the issue of blood, and the head of the synagogue called Jesus. He said, look, my daughter is dying. And Jesus said, I will go with you. But as he was on his way there was a crowd, and they saw Jesus, and they gathered around him, and a woman pushed through, and the Bible says she had an issue of blood. She had a bleeding problem for 12 years. She should not even have been out, because according to the Jewish law, she should have been ostracized and away. But she was there, and she touched Jesus. The Bible says she touched the hem of his garment. The head of the synagogue must have thought, oh, no, my little girl's definitely going to die now, because now we've got this woman that shouldn't even be out, and she's touched him, and now that she's touched him, he becomes unclean. But you see, the amazing thing about it is that Jesus, he doesn't. He makes us clean. He's the one that makes us clean. And what did she touch? The Bible says the hem of his garment. The hem of his garment that she actually touched. And one of the ladies here today bought me this, and this is a Jewish prayer shawl. And what happens is they used to wear their undergarments, and God told them what they had to have was these tassels that you see on the. Let me just hold them up. These tassels on the end they had to be like that. And as you see, there's a long one, and the long one is on the end. Okay, these are called tzitzits. And these was God told them that you've got to be different from other people, because these are, remember the bracelets, what would Jesus do? Is to remind you of God. And they had them only on the corners. When we look at this lady, why did she get healed? I'll tell you why she got healed. It's because she looked and she saw that he was wearing these, because they do, and even today in Israel they wear them. And she remembered Malachi, where Malachi the prophet, the minor prophet, said, and the Son of Righteousness will rise up with healing in his wings. The Son of Righteousness was a prophetic for the Messiah, will rise up with healing in his wings. The word for wings is kanaf in Hebrew, and it also means corners. And if you notice, the long zitzit is on the corners. She recognized that. She reached out and touched the fringe, the long one, and she got healed. And then Jesus went across, and then the little dead girl, he brought her back to life again. He says, don't worry, she's not dead. And they laughed at him, but he was right. And I just want to finish, and I'm finishing right now, because Romans 8 is great. Jesus rose on the 17th day of the Jewish month of Nisan. Let me just tell you very quickly what else happened on that day. That was the day when the Israelites came out of Egypt and crossed the Red Sea. It was on the 17th day of Israel, and that was the day they got saved from Pharaoh. On the 17th day of Nisan, the Bible tells us that Noah's Ark rested on Mount Ararat, and the people in the boat, as well as the animals, got saved on that particular day, because it was the 17th day of Nisan. In the book of Esther, we find that Haman, who wanted to kill all the Jews, he himself, who wanted to kill all of the Jews and got the king to send out a decree to say they're all going to be killed, the gallows he built for the Jewish people, he was hung on those gallows on the 17th day of Nisan. Jesus Christ, and the Jewish people were saved. Jesus Christ rose on the 17th day of Nisan, and he became our first fruits. And because of that, we got saved on the 17th day of Nisan. Now, what is the 17 all about? And I'm finishing with this scripture. Somebody just said, praise the Lord. There you go. It's Romans 8, 35 and 39. And I just want to read it to you. Romans 8, 35 to 39. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall trouble or hardship or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword? As it is written, for your sake we face death all day long. We are considered as sheep to be slaughtered. No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height and depth or anything else in creation will be able to separate us from the love of God. Guess what? There are 17 things that will not separate you from the love of God. The number 17 was very, very important. The 17th day of Nisan is when Jesus rose from the grave. It's because of the resurrection we will be resurrected. And I just want to thank you all for listening to my story today. It could go on forever, but it's not. God bless you, and thank you very much.